He was just another face in the crowd, a man most people ignored as they walked past. His clothes were old and torn, his shoes barely held together, and his eyes carried the weight of years of hardship. For many, he was invisible, a homeless guy who had nothing to offer. But behind the tired face and rough hands was a heart that still held on to honesty, kindness, and hope, even when the world had given him very little in return. Each day began the same. He would wake up on a park bench or under a bridge, stretching his sore body from the cold ground. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, but finding food was never easy. Sometimes strangers gave him coins. Sometimes he searched through trash cans for leftovers. He had learned to survive on little, but survival came at the cost of dignity. Every time someone looked away from him in disgust, a small part of his heart broke. Life on the streets was harsh. The cold nights bit into his skin. The hot days left him weak and dehydrated. Rain soaked his thin clothes. And he had no shelter to protect himself. Other homeless people became his companions, each with their own stories of loss and pain. They shared scraps of food, shared laughter on rare good days, and looked out for each other when danger came. Yet, even in that small circle, loneliness often swallowed him. He thought often about the life he once had. He had not always been homeless. Once, he had a small job, a rented room, and dreams for the future. But life had been cruel. A series of mistakes, lost opportunities, and bad luck had stripped him of everything. One problem led to another, and soon he found himself without a roof over his head. At first, he told himself it would only be temporary. But days turned into months, and months turned into years despite his situation. He still carried values his parents had taught him long ago. They had raised him to believe that honesty mattered more than riches. That kindness was worth more than gold, even though he had lost his home, his possessions, and his comfort. He never let go of those lessons. They were all he had left to guide him through the long nights and hopeless days. Sometimes, when he begged on the streets, people assumed he was dangerous or dishonest. They clutched their bags tighter, avoided his eyes, and hurried away. He wanted to shout, "I am still human, I still have dignity," but his voice often went unheard. So he kept silent, carrying the pain inside. It was easier than trying to convince the world that he was not what they thought he was. His greatest battle was not just hunger or the cold. It was the fight against despair. Every day tested his will to keep going. There were times when he wanted to give up, to stop fighting. But then he would remember the small kindnesses that strangers sometimes showed. A smile, a warm meal, a kind word. Those little moments gave him enough strength to carry on another day. One evening, after a long day of wandering the city streets, he sat down near a busy sidewalk. His stomach was empty, and his body was weak. The noise of cars and footsteps surrounded him, but he felt distant from it all. People rushed past, each lost in their own lives, none noticing the man sitting quietly in the corner. He lowered his head, wondering if tomorrow would be any different. As the night deepened, he looked up at the stars. His body was tired, but his heart whispered a quiet prayer. Not for wealth, not for luxury, but for a chance. A chance to be seen as a human being again. He longed for one moment where the world would recognize his honesty, his character, his worth. Little did he know, that chance was closer than he imagined. His days of survival, his years of being invisible, were about to collide with a moment that would change his life. On an ordinary evening, while searching for a place to rest, his eyes would fall upon something lying on the ground, something small, something ordinary to others, but for him, it would be the beginning of a story no one could have predicted. It was a cold evening. The kind of night when the wind cut through thin clothes like a knife. The homeless guy wrapped his arms around himself. Searching for warmth, his stomach ached with hunger. and his eyes scanned the ground, hoping for a piece of bread, a coin, anything. As he walked slowly down a quiet street, something shiny caught his attention under the dim streetlight. At first, he thought it was trash. Maybe a piece of metal or glass, but as he stepped closer, his eyes widened. It was a smartphone, sleek and expensive, far more valuable than anything he had touched in years. He bent down, picked it up with trembling hands, and stared at the glowing screen. The battery still had power, and notifications lit up one after another. For a moment, he could not believe it. The phone felt like treasure, something worth hundreds, maybe thousands. He looked around quickly, half expecting someone to snatch it from him, but the street was empty. The phone was his to keep at least for now. His heart raced. His mind filled with thoughts. With this phone, he could sell it and get enough money for food, shelter, maybe even clothes. He imagined walking into a pawn shop, handing it over, and finally holding bills in his hands for someone who had slept hungry so many nights. The temptation was overwhelming, but then another thought struck him. This was not just a piece of metal and glass. This was someone's lifeline, a tool filled with memories, contacts, personal stories. Someone out there was desperately searching for it. He turned it over in his hands, whispering to himself. "What should I do?" The phone buzzed. A call came in. He froze, staring at the name on the screen. It was unfamiliar, but the caller kept trying. His thumb hovered over the answer button, but fear stopped him. What if the person accused him of stealing? What if they called the police? He had no place to hide, no voice that people trusted. He felt trapped, finally. After several missed calls, a message appeared. It read, "Please, if you have this phone, return it. It belongs to a very important man. We will reward you." His heart pounded. He realized then whose phone it might be. The name written in the messages confirmed it was the phone of a millionaire, a man known in the city for his wealth and power. His knees felt weak. He sat down on the curb, holding the phone tightly. A millionaire's phone in the hands of a man who owned nothing. It felt unreal. The difference between their worlds was like the distance between earth and sky. One had everything, the other had nothing. And yet, fate had tied them together in this strange moment. He thought of all the possibilities. If he sold the phone, he might eat for weeks, maybe even find shelter for a month. But if he returned it, perhaps he would be rewarded. Perhaps this was a chance to prove he was more than what people saw. His mind battled between survival and honesty, between hunger and dignity. The night grew colder as he sat there thinking. His stomach growled, his hands shook. But deep in his heart, he already knew the answer. He whispered to himself, "This phone is not mine. If I take it, I will lose myself." Slowly, he stood up, determined to find a way to return it. The screen lit up again. Another message came, this time giving an address, begging for its safe return. It was the mansion of the millionaire, a place he had only seen from far away. He clutched the phone tightly. Feeling as if it weighed more than gold, he began to walk, step by step, toward a destination that could either end in kindness or disaster. The city lights blurred as he moved forward. His feet ached, his body trembled, but he kept going. Every step felt heavy with questions. Would the millionaire believe him? Would they see him as honest, or would they treat him as a thief? The doubt gnawed at him, but his heart whispered, "Do the right thing." When he finally reached the tall gates of the mansion, his breath caught. The house loomed like a palace, lights glowing in the windows, security guards standing watch. He hesitated, clutching the phone close to his chest. For a moment, fear almost made him turn back. But then he thought of the man who had lost it, the panic in those messages, and the truth inside his own heart. With trembling steps, he approached the guard and held out the phone. His voice cracked as he said, "I found this. It belongs here. Please give it back. The guard stared at him suspiciously, but the weight of honesty in his eyes could not be denied. The phone was taken inside, and soon word would reach the millionaire. The homeless guy had done the unthinkable. He had chosen honesty over survival, kindness over temptation. The mansion doors opened slowly, and he was led inside by the guards. His heart raced, his palms sweaty, every step felt unreal. The homeless guy who usually slept under bridges was now standing on marble floors. Staring at chandeliers that sparkled above him like stars, he clutched his worn jacket tighter, feeling out of place in a world so different from his own. After a few minutes, the millionaire appeared, tall and dressed in an elegant suit. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He had been searching frantically for his lost phone, and now, seeing it returned by someone who clearly had nothing, he was taken by surprise. He walked closer, studying the man who stood nervously before him. "You found my phone," the millionaire said. His voice steady but curious. The homeless guy nodded. Holding it out with both hands, "Yes, sir." It was on the street, his voice cracked with nerves. He expected suspicion, maybe even anger, but instead, the millionaire took the phone gently. His eyes softening, for a long moment, silence hung between them. The millionaire looked at the man, his ragged clothes, his tired face, the way his hands trembled with both fear and honesty. He was struck by the fact that this stranger, who had every reason to sell the phone or keep it, had chosen to return it instead. It was an act few people would do, even those with more. The millionaire cleared his throat. "You could have sold this for a good amount of money," he said slowly. "Why bring it back?" The homeless guy lowered his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because it wasn't mine, I may not have much. But I still have my honesty, and that's the only thing I cannot lose." Those words pierced the room. Simple yet powerful. The millionaire felt a lump in his throat. He had built his empire on wealth and possessions. But here was a man with nothing who still carried a treasure greater than gold: integrity. The millionaire motioned for him to sit, but the man hesitated, afraid to dirty the expensive furniture. With a kind smile, the millionaire insisted, "Please, sit. You are my guest." Slowly, the homeless guy lowered himself onto the edge of a chair, his eyes wide with disbelief. Never in his life had he been treated with such respect in a place like this. Moments later, a servant brought water and food. The smell made his stomach twist with hunger. He had not eaten a proper meal in days, yet even then, he waited until the millionaire nodded for him to eat. Only then did he take a bite, chewing slowly. Grateful for every flavor, the millionaire watched him quietly, realizing something he had forgotten over the years. He saw gratitude in every movement. He saw dignity in every word. This man, who had nothing, reminded him of values money could never buy. When the meal ended, the millionaire leaned back and said, "I must reward you. What do you want?" His words were kind, but also curious. He expected the man to ask for cash, clothes, or shelter. That was what anyone in his position might do. Yet what came next stunned him. The homeless guy looked at him with steady eyes. "I don't need money. I don't need gold. All I want is a chance." The millionaire raised an eyebrow. "A chance?" The man nodded. "Yes, sir. A chance to work. To stand on my own feet. I don't want charity. I just want an opportunity to live with dignity again." The room fell silent. The millionaire felt the weight of those words. He had offered riches, but the man had asked for respect. He had asked not for survival, but for life, and in that moment, the millionaire knew he was speaking to someone extraordinary. For years, the millionaire had dealt with people who begged for favors, for money, for shortcuts, yet here was a man who had slept on cold streets, who had suffered hunger and humiliation, and still he did not ask for wealth. He asked for work, for a chance to rebuild. The millionaire's eyes softened. He stood and extended his hand. "Then a chance you shall have," he said warmly. The homeless guy stared at the hand in disbelief, his eyes filled with tears as he shook it, feeling the weight of a promise that could change his life forever. That night, as he left the mansion, the phone returned, his belly full. And a promise in his heart. He knew his life was about to change. He had come with nothing but honesty. And now he was leaving with something far greater, a doorway into a future he thought he had lost forever. The next morning, the homeless guy woke up in the same cold corner of the city. But his heart felt different. He replayed the events of the night before. The mansion, the food, the handshake, and the promise of a chance. For years he had carried nothing but hunger and hopelessness. But now he carried something new: hope, true to his word. The millionaire sent a car for him that very afternoon. For the first time in years, he sat in the back of a clean vehicle. Staring out the window as the city rushed by, he looked at his reflection in the glass. Barely recognizing himself, he whispered, "This is real," as if afraid it might vanish. When he arrived at the mansion, the millionaire was waiting. This time, the conversation was not about the lost phone, but about the future. The millionaire asked him, "What can you do? What skills do you have?" The homeless man lowered his head. Ashamed, "It has been years since I worked. Sir, I can do simple jobs. I can clean, I can carry things. I will do anything if it means I can stand on my own feet again." The millionaire studied him carefully. He saw not just a man in rags, but a man with honesty and determination burning in his eyes. "Very well," the millionaire said. "From today, you will work here. You will help with small tasks in my company. But remember, this is not charity. This is your chance. And you must prove yourself." Tears filled the homeless man's eyes as he nodded quickly. "I will not waste it, sir. I promise." The days turned into weeks. And true to his word, the man worked harder than anyone else. He arrived early, stayed late, and never complained. He swept floors, carried boxes, ran errands, and treated every task with respect. His honesty and dedication soon caught the attention of everyone around him. Some workers laughed at him in the beginning, mocking his ragged clothes, but over time they grew silent. Because his actions spoke louder than their words, the millionaire watched closely. Every time he saw the man working with humility and determination, his respect grew. He had given him a small chance. But the man was turning it into something bigger. Months passed, and the man's life began to change. He earned his first paycheck in years, and instead of spending it on comfort, he saved most of it. He bought clean clothes, found a small rented room, and slowly rebuilt the dignity he thought he had lost forever. For the first time in a long time, he no longer felt invisible. He was part of the world again. But the true change was not just in his life, it was in his heart. He felt alive again. He smiled more, he laughed again, and he even started to dream, something he had not done in years. All because he had chosen honesty on that night when temptation could have led him down another path. The millionaire often invited him back to the mansion. Not as a stranger, but as a friend. They would sit together, sharing meals, talking about life. The bond between them grew stronger. The millionaire admired his humility, while the man admired his generosity in each other. They found something rare, a reminder that kindness could connect to people from completely different worlds. One evening, during a small gathering, the millionaire shared the story with his guests. He spoke about the homeless guy who had returned his phone when he could have easily kept it. He told them how, instead of asking for money, the man had asked only for a chance. The room fell silent, many eyes filled with tears. They realized they were witnessing a story of true character from that day. The man was no longer called homeless. He was an employee, a friend, and an example. His choice had not only changed his own life, but had touched countless others. People in the company respected him. Others outside admired him. And his story spread far beyond the city. The millionaire once said to him, "You asked for the smallest thing, but it turned out to be the greatest. You reminded me that wealth is not in what we own, but in the choices we make." And the man, now smiling with pride, would reply, "I only asked for what I needed most, chance." Everything else came from that. His story became a lesson to many. A reminder that integrity can open doors money never could. A reminder that the richest gift one can give is not always cash, but opportunity. And a reminder that even the most broken life can be rebuilt with one honest choice.